they actually that that has to do with their constitution too. I've mentioned it. We both
Mm.
actually talked about like
Yeah.
15 versions of their constitution. They run around changing their constitution like it's freaking tie, dude. You know, so that kind of turned me off on them. That's why I have such an issue with French people. No better, you know. They set themselves to the Americans here over in the States and give up on that
Okay.
foolishness of rewriting the Constitution.
Okay. You know my views on some of the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the second topic that I want to go into. See what you think about this.
Again,
Um,
do you want to just add the reference?
okay, so this has to do with the Supreme Court's the Supreme Court sides with oil companies in Louisiana, uh, coastal damage mitigation. Go ahead and post this link in that, but I'll I'll read it to you and see what your thoughts are. Figure out what that is. You know, I'm trying to navigate and everything. Yeah, here we go. There it is right there.
Oh,
And this
mm,
is taken from we have one from PBS. We also have one from the Supreme Court of the United States. Uh, and
okay. Okay,
I'll
it's just in search. Um,
now
okay.
the one from the Supreme Court of the United States, they actually have a PDF with all of the information on it if you guys want to check it out and read it. Now, the PDF is pretty freaking big. So, and I do not want to read anything from PBS. So I'm just
Okay,
going
you can summarize it.
I can summarize it from what I've put up here. So, um, so that it's pretty cut and dry. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 8-0 that certain Louisiana coastal uh, damage lawsuits against Chevron and other oil companies can be moved from state to federal court under the federal order removal statute. Now, the case background involves the litigation stems from lawsuits filed by Plaquemines Parish, other Louisiana parishes in 2013, alleging that oil and gas companies, including Chevron and its predecessor, Texaco, caused extensive coastal damages through decades of drilling, dredging canals, and dumping wastewater into marshland. A state jury in April of 2025 awarded Chevron $745 million in damages for environmental harm to Plaquemines Parish. The companies argued that the lawsuit should be heard in federal court because their wartime oil production and refining activities were conducted under federal contracts during World War II. Now, the Supreme Court ruling in Chevron US Inc. versus Plaquemine Parish, the Supreme Court unanimously held that Chevron's wartime crusade or crude oil production was sufficiently connected to its federal duties defining aviation gasoline for the U.S. military, satisfying the, the relating to requirement of the federal officer removal statute, which is 28 USC 1442A and 1 of it. The Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the court, emphasized that the connection need not be direct or strictly casual, but must not be tenuous, remote, or uh, peripheral. Justice Katenji Brown Jackson concurred, agreeing that the case could be transferred to federal court through, or though she applied a slightly different reason. The ruling vacated the Fifth Court's 2024 decision that had kept the case in state court and remanded it for further proceedings consistent with the Supreme Court's opinion. Justice Alito recused himself due to financial ties to a company involved in the broader dispute. So the implications, the procedural victory for oil company. The decision allows Chevron and other defendants to litigate certain claims in federal court, which is often viewed as a more favorable venue for corporate defenders. Limited scope. The ruling affects only a subset of the 42 lawsuits filed by Louisiana parishes, specifically those tied to wartime fuel refining activity. The $745 million state court verdict remains intact for now, pending further federal court review. Ongoing litigation. Federal courts will now determine whether the removal of valid is valid for each case, particularly for claims involving post-1980 activity that may be less directly connected to wartime conditions. Hold on, for some reason that mic went up high again. Now, Robert's. Here, mute out real quick. Mute out real quick. You're way too loud. Hit mute on that.
Oh.
That was way too loud. I don't know what the
Yeah, I could hear it. Just the background natural feedback.
I couldn't believe how loud that went. Now, federal courts will now ongoing litigation. Federal courts will now determine whether the removal of is valid for each case, particularly for claims involving post-1980 activity that may be less directly connected to wartime contracts. Environmental and political context. Louisiana has lost over 20,000 square miles of coastal land in the past century, with oil and gas infrastructure identified as a significant factor. The state could lose an additional 3,000 square miles in coming decades, highlighting the stakes of these lawsuits for coastal restoration efforts.
Who's making that claim?
That is coming from Newsmax, WSIL TV, and also Supreme Court.
Because I was just wondering if it's just a claim, if that last claim, it's just some sort of green liberal.
One of the sources is PBS. That's the reason why I didn't want to read Supreme Court. Most likely, that's probably one of the reasons where they got most. But in summary, the Supreme Court decision does not resolve the underlying liability of Chevron or other oil companies, but establishes certain environmental lawsuits can be moved to federal court when the challenged conduct is connected to federal duties. This procedural ruling represents a significant win for the oil industry while leaving the broader environmental and restoration claims in Louisiana subject to continued litigation.
Again, that last claim is those newspapers, those agencies.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that is though is that could actually be a good that actually could be a good argument because when we had the Gulf catastrophe that happened in was it in the early 2000s where they had the oil spill, okay, um, these these oil companies got away with that 100%
Mhm.
scot free. I mean, they didn't get any kind of damage whatsoever, and they're still trying to get over the damage that was done to them, not just in Louisiana, but the surrounding states that are.
I mean, I can see the argument as when it comes to governmental contracts. I mean, or you can make an argument that it was the government's responsibility to make sure that those contracts were sustainable. And yeah, so I can see that argument.
Going to unmute this real quick and see if I can
Okay.
get this straightened out because that was way too high, and I don't really understand why it was doing that.
But you see my point.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the thing of it is though is we really do need to be a lot more careful about that because I know that a lot of people and I am too. I'm really against this whole environmental um, situation, about because everybody's trying to push the whole climate change and stuff. But at the same time, man, you got to use your freaking brain. You know what I mean? There's too much going on that's actually true. It's not just it's it's not just make believe. You know what I mean? Like these companies are taking advantage and they're getting away with it. They're, yeah, like Robert was talking about the Koch brothers earlier.
So arguably, I would argue that it's full government, may that be federal or state, to strengthen regulations. I would argue that this is because of loopholes in regulations. Governments, may they be federal or local, are producing poor legislation.
Yeah, but they brought this thing up about um, time zone, like how many years you can be in office.
Mm.
That right there would be the perfect thing because if you only got so many years doing it, you're not going to be sitting there rigging it up for years and years where
Well,
favoritism.
actually, they would. You know what I mean? Like when you were talking about the Koch brothers. Well, I mentioned this before too, where it comes down to where they make a profit. Okay. Now, if they disagree with something over in Europe that they with what we do here in the United States, the Koch brothers will split it up. They will come to the United States. They'll advocate this, and then go to Europe and advocate just the opposite, so that they can make a buck off of it.
Mm.
You see what I mean? So it's not really the regulations; it's the people who are manipulating these regulations so that they
Well,
can
I
make a
would argue
profit
that
from
if
it.
those regulations were strengthened, then these companies will have less power within that area, within that jurisdiction.
Well, we were talking. What was it? It was the towers that we were talking about when it caught on fire and all those people died. And like over in the United Kingdom, is it still going on there? Like they still don't want to settle that frickin' investigation because there were people who were involved in it that were higher up in the political
Well,
parties.
again, you talk about the Greenfield thing,
Yeah, the Grenville. That's a
and
perfect example.
as we mentioned before, the the, the investigation is meant to conclude next year.
Yeah,
Am I right?
and
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 Unless they
so we are just speculating at this present moment.
Yeah, but
still, I mean, how many years ago did the Grimp? That was at least
Again,
4
again,
years
these
ago.
things take time. This isn't a episode of Inspector Morse where, or Murder She Wrote, where there's a weird clue over there, and immediately the case is solved.
Yeah, but dude, that was 5 years ago. That's a little bit. I mean, that's not a good
Well,
argument at
it's a
all, man.
complicated case. It's a complicated case.
No, it's not. You had a lot of people in power who were freaking manipulating the welfare system over there in England, and freaking now that there was a fire and people got hurt, they're covering their asses. Plain and simple. It was dirty
Again,
politicians.
we will. Again, I'm going to use the word alleged here.
But
That would
now
be for the case for the courts to decide upon
if
when it comes to court.
if you were saying that 1 maybe 2 years after the incident had happened, I would believe that, okay? But this is like 4 or 5 years afterward, and
Again,
there has
also,
been no
it's not
hearing.
only the case itself that takes time; it's the bureaucracy around the case.
Yeah, that's the sad part. That really is.
Granted,
That
agreed.
it's the bureaucracy which is not good. I mean, at all. People
Mm.
love to say that that shit's good, and it's not. So
Mm.
now we have just a little bit of time left. So what I want to do is I want to cover this last one, and it's from KFF Health News, and um, get through this. This has to do with some of the stuff concerning what's going on with Social Security, because a lot of people, like I said, are touting how great Trump is, and and they don't know what's really taking place. Now, when I'm talking about Social Security, you need to understand I'm not talking about people who are just disabled and stuff like that, or people who are on the welfare system. I'm talking about people who are elderly that worked all their lives,
So
freaking
we're
paid
talking
into,
about state provide or state governed pensions.
right, all of it. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the stuff that's going on when I read it. So under Trump, Social Security, under Trump, Social Security resumes what it once called clawback cruelty. Martin O'Malley, then the Social Security Administrator Commissioner, announced in March of 2024 the agency would no longer cut off people's monthly old age survivors and disability checks to recoup money they had allegedly been overpaid. A pattern
So what do you call? Sorry, before we continue, what do you call it?
they call it the clawback cruelty.
No, I mean old age
Okay,
survivors and
people's monthly old age survivors and disability checks.
survivors.
Yeah. Now, old age. What?
So what? We're talking about pensions, or are we talking about survivors of massacres? I think.
well, they're saying that if you wait until 65 or your legal age
Oh,
to
pension.
retire, you'll get your full amount, your full thing, like 1,000 or 2,000, whatever you pay at the actual thing. It's what you be getting. But that,
Sorry, I just find the word survivors in this context weird
Well, survivors is
and a little
basically
bit terrifying.
no. Basically, what it is like when people who are retired ended up passing away. What they do is survivors, people who have survived. The survivors are like the family members who,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? Those are the survivors. So you have
Uh,
monthly.
okay, that means a gives a completely different light on the situation. Carry on.
Okay, so people's monthly old age survivors and disability checks to recoup money they had allegedly overpaid. Let me start that over. Martin O'Malley, then the Social Security Administrative Commissioner, announced in March of 2024 the agency would no longer cut off people's monthly old age survivors and disability checks to recoup money that had been allegedly overpaid, a pattern he called clawback cruelty. Instead, it would default to withdraw 10% of monthly benefits. The new policy allowed people who already live on little to pay their rent and keep food on the table. Last Friday, the Trump administration reversed that policy. Beginning March 27th, to recover new overpayments, the Social Security Administration will automatically withhold 100% of recipients' monthly benefit, the agency announced. The agency said it was acting in the interest of fiscal responsibility and that the reversal would save the government about $7 billion over a decade. It is our duty to revise the overpayment repayment policy back to full withholdings as it was during the Obama administration and first Trump administration, properly safeguard taxpayer funds. Acting Commissioner Lee Dudick said in a news release. Advocates for Social Security
Sorry,
benefit.
I'm going to have to laugh here.
Wow.
Let's go for this. First of all, it's government funds, and then it's taxpayers' funds.
No.
Which one is it?
See, Social Security is what workers pay into their entire life. So when they retire, that money is supposed to be given back to them. This has nothing to do with you being taxed or anything. This is actually something that was set up for you in retirement. Okay, so
Sort of a trust fund.
yeah, and that's basically what pensions are, to be honest.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with taxes. These aren't things that freaking we should be grateful for that the government is giving us. This is something that the government owes us. See what I mean? This is what we paid into. That's what
I'm interested. I'm going back to the survivor's point. How are you eligible to be a survivor? What's the eligibility criteria?
Now, survivors are basically people who have been, from what I understand of it, they are people who had to take care of the elderly whenever they became old. They give them money to be there and take care of them. Now, I never did that with my parents or anything like that. And then people who are on disability, who have to live within the family too. That was another issue that I remember hearing about, where they got they got less money, and then their family members.
In theory, as soon as the person passes, dies, those people that are taking care of that person haven't got any extra expenses because of the death. Therefore, why would they receive the money? On what basis would they receive extra money?
Well, that's what when it comes to the extra money. Probably mute that out.
It is.
I keep hearing you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on there. Just mute it when you're not talking. That is getting really annoying. I've fixed that.
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, carry on.
Now, what that basically comes to is the fact that, like, if people who are survivors, okay, who are on disability or if they're on Social Security or something like that, they are supposed to freaking be getting extra money afterward, because when, like, a person who's disabled, who's not able to freaking work and stuff like that. They
Mhm.
get disability, okay?
Yeah.
But because they live with family members, they don't get paid as much, okay? Now, if the family is like poor, they can't freaking afford to take on somebody with a disability for their life. They can go and live with them. So
Yeah, I recognise that point. I understand that point, but from what you were saying, that even after the disabled person passes away,
no, after
the
the elderly,
family members are still survivors and still receive a
if they
thing.
are on Social Security too, yeah, that would
But
be.
if the person has died and therefore the expenditure is no longer there.
What about couples? I mean, you know what I'm saying? You got a husband and wives that are living together. One of them passes away. So you're saying that other elderly person who's in that marriage freaking has to be just thrown to the curb because their freaking old man died?
No, I'm saying that the expenditure is no longer exists, and therefore,
So the government just gets to keep the rest of what that person
the
freaking
government
put
doesn't
into the.
keep anything.
Sure they do. Sure they
The
do.
government facilitates that money
Yeah,
on
and they keep it.
public spending.
So when that person dies, freaking whatever's left, the government just can keep, right? That's what you're saying. Like,
Okay, I get it. I get to know.
see, this isn't freaking like something that the government deserves, and they're just so gracious. They give everybody freaking their fair
Yeah,
share,
precisely. That's why I hate the term government money, because it's not government money in the
right?
first place.
It's not government money.
They're
No,
only
no,
there to facilitate the spending of
no,
taxpayers' money.
Yeah, but what I found
to give
out,
it back. You know what I mean?
yeah, but what I found out on the news as well is that, okay, the amount of people that work, so okay, that pays in for into taxes and all that goes through the IRS, and
Mhm.
IRS keeps an account of how much taxes they get, how much comes in, and
Yeah.
out of all that, that tells them how many people that pays in the amount. Okay, then they go by for the ones that does not work, that's on SSI and Social Security. All right. And
Mhm.
if the more people, and here's the thing, the more people that it's on SSI, if there's more SSI than what taxes coming out, then they are saying that that's less because they don't have no account for Social Security or SSI. It's just that however amount of people that's working, they directly take it right out of IRS account to pay for this SSI and Social Security.
It's a
It got no
seesaw.
account
It's a
at
balancing
all.
act. Then, yeah, granted.
And but then when you got a group of when you got more people that's on it, like we've been having with all the programs and all that, okay, it takes even less. Okay, and they're sitting there saying about the money situation for how it's going to run out. Well, if I don't agree, if, like Roger's saying, you don't let people starve and all that.
Mm.
But when you got people that's on like all the homeless and all that, okay, and all the people that illegal aliens, when you're open up the doors and giving them all the programs that citizens of your country has, okay, what happens? Okay, when your country's paying more for illegal aliens to survive, okay, SSI, your food stamps, your medical, driving, insurance, okay, and if they don't understand the language of your country, but you know they're having problems, okay, but it's running to big bucks, what
I think this is the problem that we see in
happens
Europe,
then, you
and
know,
especially in
they're
the
talking, they're telling,
UK, in relation to unfettered migration,
yeah,
illegal immigration.
but yeah, that's what they're talking about because they're
Well,
saying
see,
about it.
that actually is a lot of propaganda too, because when it comes
In the
no
UK, it's not
when
so.
when it comes to freaking stuff like Social Security taxes, okay, illegal immigrants don't get taxed. They don't get freaking their Social Security pulled out.
True,
They
true.
aren't a part of the whole system. Now, these people want to push this whole thing that illegal immigrants are the problem for Social Security, and that's not the deal. What it is the government has been tapping into Social Security and pulling money out that
Yeah,
they shouldn't be pulling out.
Granted, but it is a problem because you stated yourself, these people want to contribute in,
Well,
therefore they are just taken.
there's only one way I can tell you that illegal immigrants or illegal aliens are affecting any of that in any way, and that would be through the food stamp administration. Okay,
In the US, that's maybe true, but in the UK, universal credit, hotel,
that
um,
would be the
phone,
equivalence. That would be the
provisions.
equivalence of what I'm talking about here in the United States with the Food Stamp Administration and the freaking like. There's a difference, like we said, between Social Security and the welfare system. Right? Now,
Okay, yeah.
now, even with the welfare system, they're supposed to be freaking at least freaking. They're at least supposed to have a green card in order to get those benefits.
Mm.
Okay, you can't be an illegal alien and freaking be able to freaking get food stamps and and money off of it. That's just illegal, period. And these people are pushing that
The UK
whole
is a
agenda
lot
that
different.
they're doing that shit, and it's just now if they got fake IDs and they're running down there and they're filing for it with fake ID, that's a
Then
different
they're bringing
subject,
another law
right?
altogether. Yeah, granted.
But that's all I wanted to say. You can
That's forward.
keep talking. Robert's one of those crazy Donald Trump lovers.
well, no, well, they have to feed somehow or another. All the people do that's here. Okay, if they have, if like if they have problems of coming up with money or whatever, okay, I've noticed before it was really brought up about here in Illinois. Okay, they started doing a whole bunch of cutbacks. Okay, to the point where like the food stamp office, they would have offices in every state, in every town. Okay, well now, if you're lucky, you have to go to one food stamp office in three towns. They took two towns as food stamp offices, shut them down to locate them all into one, and then even then, they fired about like 50% of the people there in that office to cut back. And they other programs they have done as well like that too. And to find and then like they can't. And then I found out during that same time is when sanctuary comes up popping up as well. And they're talking about cost of all this medical and all that. And for the amount of people, it's pretty sad. Uh, well, the company that helps you move here in the U.S., they got a slogan and all that. If you want to move to an area or out of state, notify them and they'll have one of them U-Haul trucks set up to where it's easy to get to. Because there were so many people that moved out of the state of Illinois because of wide variety. I mean, things, a bunch of politics, things are getting really expensive here.
Mhm.
And they just couldn't understand and they just didn't put up with it. And they moved out of Illinois over following other states, Kentucky, Missouri, and all that. Said, thank you, Illinois, because over them doing it, large companies up and left the state of Illinois over it.
You make a couple of interesting points there. Granted, we're talking about the cost of living issue, which is a major issue throughout the Western world at this present moment. B, you are also talking about facilities not being available or easily accessible by people. And C, you're also talking about a overly burdensome, large bureaucratic system, which means employing more and more civil servants to manage the bureaucratic system.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
you can
during
see
the,
this.
I was just saying about in 1983. Okay, this family took SSI to court and actually won. This lawyer as well did the whole thing, and it took at least 7 years to cause you know them wheelchairs with the eye thing where it helps move the person moves around by looking the direction. And well, it was two sons that was like that. Okay, and they signed their kids up for SSI, and SSI informed them there was nothing wrong with them at all. And that judge, and they looked and said, and you and the lawyer and all that, when they went to court and they showed the judge what the two boys were like. Okay, they can't move their hands. They're unable to move. Period. The only way they can move is by using that device where when they move their eye to a certain area, the wheelchair does it. They got that thing where you spell things out by using your eyes to hit the letter. And the judge said to the Supreme Court, this happened in the Supreme Court, that they had to reopen up all the cases of SSI because there was way too many of them that was denied by SSI. And like Roger was saying, there was too many people dipping into it and all that. They just no way. They're saying about the amount of money that was and all that. But if they were not doing what they were supposed to, and they was just having all sorts of problems.
I went ahead and dropped that link in there. I forgot to do the link.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I know about it on you. Is there any other points you wanted to bring up on that?
Well, the thing that I was getting ready to get into, you two rudely interrupted me again. Was
Sorry, apologies.
now the thing about it is what Trump is basically under Trump's leadership. Social Security has reinstalled a cruel policy of clawing back Social Security overpayments with no regard for an American's ability to pay or whether the overpayment was an error by the agency, said Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, the top Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee. Now,
The term cruelty came from him. You're just quoting that.
Well, it really is cruelty because I've been around people who have these disabilities and who are elderly and poor. Okay, like when you go on and you listen to all these other bullshitters who frickin' are talking this shit on the internet, frickin' they usually come from frickin' really well-to-do families, or they are a well-to-do person with, or even middle class, and they don't have to worry about it. But we're talking about poor people here, frickin' who can't frickin' make ends meet, much less frickin' have a frickin' 2-car garage, you know what I'm saying, and own their own house. I've known people like this, and that's what it is. It's a very, very, and these are elderly, Okay, like I said, this isn't just people who are on welfare. This is freaking the elderly who work their entire lives away and they're living on their Social Security. Okay,
Mm.
something that they were told they were going to get when they retire. All right. Now, the new plan to completely withhold monthly benefits is what we're talking about. They're going to hold entire monthly benefits from recipients who were allegedly overpaid. And when they did research into this, they found out that it was actually because of government error that these people were being overpaid. Okay, the government.
Have any of these overpaying payer or overpaying have any of these people that have been overpaid actually at the time requested their local benefits office to review?
No.
Well, some of them were
Okay,
getting.
so surely that's there. Then surely, if that is the case, then it is the if it's the receiver's fault for not requesting a review.
Well, I mean, when you turn around and you get a check or you get a
And
letter,
if you're a benefit receiver, and you know you're going to get, let's say, I don't know, let's make an arbitrary amount of money number, let's say $150 per week, as an
right?
argument, and you and in a couple of weeks you're getting $180, then surely you are sitting there scratching your head, wondering,
No,
well,
because
how
listen,
I got that.
it gets even worse than that because they send you a letter saying you're going to get $180 a week before you get the extra money. So first, what they do is they send you out money saying or a letter saying, look, you're going to get more money. And then when they realize they've overpaid you, then they decide they're going to take it all away from you because you've been overpaid. Now, it wasn't the person's fault for getting
Okay.
overpaid, okay? It was the government making an error and then deciding they're going to penalize the person getting the money, okay? Since they made a
Okay.
mistake, the other person has to pay for it. They're talking about literally taking away these people's freaking pensions so that they can save $7 billion over a decade.
So, in theory, it would be better for the government to ignore it and to scrap that amount of money. It's gone, thrown away.
What it also does is it implies that the government expects more overpayments in the years ahead too. You know what I mean? They're not fixing their problem. They're already expecting it. You know?
Yeah, but like with people that on, we call that government. You know, they get government from the military. We call that. Yeah, veterans pay. Okay. Same thing with that. They were talking about with like that. Okay.
This is
Yeah,
also adjusted for inflation, isn't it? So, if you were paid a extra, let's say $40 per week 5 years ago, that's going to be accounted. Inflation is going to be accounted.
yeah, but then they're talking like if you're getting that, you can't get SSI. Okay. But now, how's that fair to all the whole thing? You know.
Vets. How's it fair to the vets? I mean,
Yeah, that's what
you
I'm
know what I
saying.
mean? Like there's amputees and shit that freaking lost their legs in battle and shit, and they can't get freaking Social Security because they got veterans benefits. Are you serious? That's
And then they
ridiculous.
do that spin down as well as SI does.
You know. So that's the kind of stuff that gets me, and it's like I said in chat, you know, whenever what got me to actually want to do this was because I was in a censorship sucks chat, and I was talking about how cruel these fucking bastards are when it comes to freaking the elderly, man. And like with my mom and dad, man, these people were horrible to them. My mom had to have 3 wheelchairs, and they gave frickin' her a maximum of 2 wheelchairs for her entire life. They will buy you 2 wheelchairs, and that's it. Okay, the
Uh,
rest of that has to come out of frickin'
Your pocket.
your pocket. Okay, but they don't tell you that shit.
I could imagine some overly nice, overly generous lawyer looking at this present moment.
Well, that's the whole deal, though. See, there's a whole lot of lawyers looking at it. There's a lot of
Hmm.
money to be made on it. You know what I'm saying? That's my whole thing with it. All this stuff comes down to freaking making money and manipulating
No,
the
not
system.
necessarily. You have people in the legal industry that are more civic minded. Not all lawyers are greedy, money grabbing. There are a couple of good ones out there. Maybe not very many, but there are a couple of good ones out there.
You know it. Now the Social Security runs on a very old computer system too. What you got to understand now, in an interview with O'Malley, uh, he predicted that the public will experience much larger wait times trying to get through to the agency by phone and longer waits for disability determinations.
Okay, that's not really down to the computer systems. That's really down to the number of people that are actually in the call centers.
Now, Social Security
The call
runs,
center operators.
according to him, the Social Security runs on very old computer system and
Again, like I pointed out earlier, if something has been functioning perfectly for the last 40 odd years,
now
if a computer system has been functioning perfectly for the last 40 odd years, why won't it function perfectly for the next 40 odd years?
he said that this can only result in system collapse and the risk of totally shutting down the agency is greatly increased by people mucking around that don't know what they're doing.
Okay, yeah, that is a issue in itself, but you can't blame the computer system itself for that. That's a people issue, not a computer system issue.
And he advised recipients to save money to prepare for an interruption of benefits, while at the same time Elon Musk, while he's being a deputy of Trump, boasted on taking a chainsaw to the federal government. And he's also called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. And in a signed
Okay,
in a signed declaration filed in federal court, a recently retired Social Security official, Tiffany Flick, said she witnessed a disregard for critical processes as members of DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, which Trump established by executive order, demanded access to sensitive Social Security systems, including files that contain beneficiaries' banking information. And new management at the SSA called its workforce bloated. But under the previous administration, the agency was telling a starkly different story. Now, a year ago,
so either we've got too many people working in that agency, or we've got too few people working in the agency. Which one is it?
Right. Now, a year ago, O'Malley told lawmakers that as the number of people receiving benefits increased, historic underfunding and understaffing at the agency created a service delivery crisis. So late last year, the agency provided data to KFF Health News showing that in September its workforce was nearly a 50-year low. As of last month, applicants for disability benefits were waiting an average of more than 7 months for a decision, according to the SSA.
So we've got too few employees then
Yeah.
in that agency. Okay.
Okay.
Remember, there's a sort of balance in that. Too many, and you have an overly bloated system.
Well, you were
Too
mentioning
few, and you haven't got enough people to manage.
you were mentioning that, so I wanted to pull that up because I've seen it somewhere, so I figured it. Scroll down and try to figure out where it was at. When you were talking about the amount of people that needed to run the staffing and thing. So the staffing cuts will lead to more overpayments than ever and will make it harder for the people affected to clear up mistakes, said Jen Burdick, an attorney.
It's a catch-22 problem.
An attorney at Community Legal Services, Philadelphia. So that's really what it comes down to is they're running out of staff members, old equipment, and now they're playing the blame game. You know what I mean? So
I'm not sure. Again, I'm not so sure if the older equipment then is a good argument. If you say there isn't enough people to manage that equipment, then that's an argument, but you can't blame the equipment itself. It's the old sort of a tool trade person blaming their hammer for bad work.
Well, if their hammer was freaking programmed in, could actually do a job that a human didn't have to freaking do themselves by actually touching the hammer, then yeah, you could go ahead and blame the hammer for doing that, Mark. That's what computers are there for. If they become old and defective, then yes, you can blame them.
Well, yes. You said you didn't say anything about defective. You said old.
Well, I mean, outdated and old, yeah.
Why is it outdated? If there's a difference between not modern and defective.
You know what? You would have a filing cabinet sitting next to you with those beige-looking freaking files.
if I had enough employees to sort of through them, then maybe.
Yeah, I guarantee you would. Like, I remember the last government office I went into, man. It was all like sterile. And it looked like the 1960s all over again, and this guy with these like really, really thick freaking black glasses and a pocket protector was sitting behind a freaking desk with pins in his pocket protector. He had those files.
Also, if you're looking at a cost point, then infrastructure, new machines, new software, that costs. Training, that costs.
I mean, I've had to go into Social Security office to get like Social Security card and stuff like that. That's when I found out that they don't recognize a birth certificate as a form of identity anymore. And to be honest with you, I didn't see defective equipment anywhere. So for me, I don't really believe that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just because something isn't modern doesn't mean it's defective.
I mean, literally, it was modern.
I mean, we've been using the wheel for thousands of years. That's not a modern thing, and it's not defective.
I was sitting in that waiting room, and I could see the computer equipment and stuff back behind the thing. I know a little bit about computers,
Mm-hmm.
So freaking, I mean, I can honestly tell you, these were not outdated equipment. And I don't live in a huge freaking area, dude. I live in a freaking small town, maybe 16,000, 30,000 people at the most, So the office I had to go to wasn't that big. And they had pretty decent equipment in there. So I mean, I just see that as a rambling of bullshit, coming up with excuses.
Hmm.
So, because I know if they had good equipment, then freaking the bigger freaking offices with more freaking people that they had to deal with would have had better equipment, if nothing else, you know.
Well, it's the old joke, isn't it? In the banking and the financial industry, you've got machines and software that have been running for 30, 40, 50 odd years now, and they're still functioning
Mm-hmm.
and still doing its job, its tasks.
The only thing I have to say about this is like, hardworking American taxpayers who paid into Social Security all of their lives so that they can depend on it in the time that they needed it the most, um, are given letters by this agency, okay? And the fact that the SSA's actions are leaving some of them worse off, uh, through no fault of their own is absolutely acceptable.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So, and that's the one thing that really gets me. It's like I've heard all these jackasses getting on here who claim to be conservative, and they keep saying freaking, this is about the welfare system. Welfare system. They're taking money from me, and they're taking money from me. That's all they care about. You know, but none of them are
It is
freaking.
the
None of
welfare system, but it is more related to the management of the
Let me
welfare
explain
system.
this to you about this. I'm going to tell it to every single person who thinks like that, okay? They're going to be freaking 65 years old one of these days. They're going to be 80 years old, okay? And if they freaking hear me talking right now, I want them to remember freaking me saying this shit when they're 80 years old and freaking they're freaking losing everything they got. That they sat there and they freaking talked this shit. Because it's going to happen to you one of these. Okay, you're going to be 65 years old. You're going to be 80 years old, and you're going to freaking depend on this shit. And guess what? Nobody's going to give a fuck about you.
Unless you've got a big nest egg they can rely on.
And those people don't give a shit about the less fortunate. They freaking made their money. You know what I mean? I hear people talking this shit these days, dude. And you know what? They live in fucking nice houses out in the middle of the country with freaking millions of dollars in the fucking bank, dude. You know what I'm saying? They ain't got no care in the fucking world, dude. Ain't got shit to fucking worry about.
They may have bought the houses when house prices were relatively cheap.
You know? I mean,
take as an example, my grandmother died in 2023, and she had a house since the 50s.
Right.
And at the time, obviously, it was relatively cheap. I think it went for about $250,000. British pounds, or something like that, at the when it was sold.
Still,
still
a lot of money for that time period. Like, I always remind people the value of a dollar. Okay, back in the 70s, if you had $10,000, you were rich for 6 months. You know what I mean? $10,000 meant freaking 6 months of your year was covered. You know? Yeah. These days, man, $10,000 is shit.
But this goes back to the cost of living argument as well.
Exactly.
Food prices, rental prices, food prices, and other.
So, Mark, we have made it our 41 minutes, and we got 15 rough minutes before the top of the hour. So, I want to end Untethered for this week, and we'll come back a bit, do some more later. So, with that being said, do you want to give your socials for Untethered?
Just realised my coffee's gone really cold. Yeah. I'm at minds.com. Username Medworthy.
And Robert is back in the room, but he's not on the computer.